So back in 2020, I, Steven Shinder, started a podcast called Delayed Replay, recapping and reviewing the latest films. However, it got broadcast into an alternate universe where those films got delayed and came out differently from how I was describing them. Because of how me and my guests had been describing the films, people in that other universe were saying that this was all an improvised comedy podcast, which, listening back, I can totally get why they believe that. A lot of weird stuff happened in that first year, and I even met my other self from that other universe, who pops in from time to time, for better or worse. And now, in the year 2023, this podcast continues, still recapping and reviewing movies and sometimes some other things that got delayed or cancelled in that other universe. A new episode Saturdays every other week, unless I decide otherwise for some special reason or whatever. You are listening to Delayed Replay, Season 4.
Hey everyone, this is Steven. Before we start this Captain America Brave New World episode, of course the title changed because of sensitivity reasons, and it was already the name of a Falcon and Winter Soldier episode anyway, so very understandable reasons. Just a heads up that after the discussion, so like an hour in or so, there will be the other Steven from that other universe where things got delayed and different things like just came out. And he'll be talking mostly non-spoiler, like non-spoiler thoughts on Doom Patrol and that show ending, that DC show. And then non-spoiler thoughts on the Marvels for a bit before going into spoiler thoughts on that, and then non-spoiler thoughts on Loki and the series ending, and then in his universe, and then after that, I think he's also gonna mention a little bit about the two new episodes of Invincible from its second season, and then talk about a trip to see The Room with a couple friends. Again, non-spoiler thoughts. So check the timestamps in the show notes for all that. And without further delay, enjoy the show. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we recap and review movies that got delayed in that other universe but came out on time in our universe. I'm your host, Steven Shinder, and joining me, it's you may have heard him on the Tomorrow War episode a while ago. I was blanking on
Yes,
the
we did do
title,
that.
but it is Austin Bennett.
What's up, gang?
Yeah,
How's it, Steven? Thanks for having me back.
yeah, for sure. You're a really good improviser, and you know what they say about improvisers? They make good
We're all
conversationalists.
liars. Yes, that too. Good conversationalists.
Yeah, I actually don't know if people actually say that. I literally just lied and made that up, so you know.
Yeah, which, I did too, but that just puts us into a spiral of if a liar lies about lying, have
Oh
they
yeah,
lied?
from the Book of Saw, yeah.
There we go.
Um, so this time we're talking about Captain America Brave New World, which on this podcast I think I've done like 4, 5, or 6 Marvel things in a row lately. So like that's wild. Marvel kind of needs to just stop, or maybe Sony just needs to stop. And it's yeah, but
How dare you stand in the way of capitalism, sir? How dare you?
I'm
We,
a strong proponent of lowercase ism. Thank you very much.
yeah,
But
we don't watch Marvel because we enjoy it. We watch it because we have to.
yeah, we'll die if we stop watching. Um, Speaking of which, I sort of have this thing where sometimes I'll like make a meal and then, or I'll heat something up real quick to eat, and then I'll feel like I can't start eating it until I figure out like what I want to watch on my TV and it takes me a while to figure out what I want to watch. So it's like I'm
Yeah,
starving.
yeah.
While have you been in that situation?
Absolutely. I think that the rule is you get like one or two preliminary bites, but then it feels wrong to start eating because you're eating your food but aren't watching something. And obviously we have to do those two together. You get caught, scrolling through Netflix trying to find something that's worth watching.
Yeah, it's much like when seeing this movie in the theater, I felt like I couldn't eat my giant Captain America bucket of popcorn until the trailers were over. So I was sitting there for like 20 minutes and I was like, "Ah, I really want to eat this." And then once the movie started, that bucket was done and like by the time the first act ended.
As
Into
far as the first act, okay, because I feel like like wait for the trailer, sure, but then once the movie starts, we're gonna power through this popcorn out of my Captain America helmet.
yeah. But before we get into that, what's your overall like? How did you get into Marvel and Captain America specifically as well?
I grew up as a classic nerd. The thing of all the old tropey nerd things. So I'm not an anime guy, but your superheroes and your physics stuff and your Dungeons and Dragons. That's kind of all my jam. So when what was it? It was 2008 when Iron Man rolled around, and we
Yeah.
get here are comic book movies, and they're just going to be kick ass. Yeah, absolutely. And I was on board for the vast majority of it. There was a point at which after the that was at the Disney buyout was sometime after that.
Yeah,
Uh
if that was like 2010, 2011, something like that.
yeah. And I think I've been really on board up through Infinity War, but there is also a point at which, it does get saturated market wise when there's just a new show every quarter. There's a new show, new movies, new something that at some point we need a refresher. We need something that'll really get the wheel spinning again. And hopefully, Brave New World does that for us. Uh, and so it's nice to watch that. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes with the things that we've set up in this movie.
Yeah, like there were Marvel shows going on at the same time as the movies, but I think for some it didn't feel as saturated, the Netflix stuff, like because it wasn't as connected. But with the Disney Plus stuff, it's like they're trying to make everything connected, which brings us into Falcon and the Winter Soldier. What'd you think about that series?
I if we're going to be really honest about this, I thought it was fine.
Okay.
We like, it's great that Bucky's got his PTSD, and it's great that Sam's got this kind of issue of, hey, how do I take up the mantle of Captain America? Now, call me crazy. I feel like there's this overall question of like, boy, who should be the next Captain America? When we're pretty directly told, like, if Captain America comes to you, hands you the shield, and says, "Hey, you're the next Captain America," like you're the next Captain America. That's not a hard question to ask. So of course there's the corporate thing of them wanting to get, new PR on it and get this whole US agent thing. Uh but I feel like it's either gonna be Bucky or it's gonna be Sam. And if he's passed to Sam, have it be Sam.
Yeah. I'm very much with you on that. I do think that, I remember after Endgame, a friend of mine was upset that Bucky didn't get the mantle because it was almost like saying, "Oh, Bucky is broken; he can't become something else." But I feel like the show dealt with some of that, at least to an extent, and it introduced some interesting ideas. It did have some pacing issues here and there, but I liked some of the messages that it had and the themes. Weirdly, since in that other universe, where things got delayed or shifted around, um, some things got cut out of the show in that other universe. Whereas over here, there was stuff like the bioweapon and a virus, and some of that kind of carries
Yeah.
over into this new movie, Captain America: Brave New World.
Yes, which we do get from seeing the way that the leader is doing his stuff. And just I mean having Bucky and the guy that we saw from Falcon and Winter Soldier. what was his name? Isaiah Bradley. There we go.
Yeah.
Um, Having the super soldiers around. But I mean, that's something Marvel's been building for a really long time, even in the comics too, is that there's decades of history around things that exist because of the super soldier serum. Like, and that's part of why the Hulk exists, is
Yeah.
that it wasn't just any random gamma radiation, or at least this is the storyline that they've kind of retconned back in at later points. Was it was the all of the little factors that went into the super soldier serum, and one of them was this gamma radiation thing, um, that got the Hulk all worked up and in. So yeah, getting all those pieces back together. Although I do have to wonder, I do have to wonder. Sam Wilson, okay, he's pararescue, awesome, great. So he's kind of like a you know a junior Navy SEAL, uh, minus the killing, uh, and he's got this
Right.
cool jetpack, right? He can fly around, he can shield himself, whatever. Uh, what does it mean to be Captain America? Do you just need the shield? Do you just need to be strong and fast? Because he's not super. We see this consistently through the movies. He's not super. Hawkeye's not super. Hawkeye's, you're going to put Hawkeye on Overwatch, have him shoot down some bad guys. Sam Wilson is going to fly around. Sam feels like he is the sidekick. He could be part of a duo at best, I would argue. I'm curious to see whether Sam is able to continue holding down movies as a standalone hero.
Yeah, because in this movie, they still lean on the buddies aspect. He and Bucky are traveling buddies, basically, in this, which is pretty much what they've always been since they first, as far back as Civil War, you could argue. And it's a fun dynamic, but at the same time, it is a good question. Like, can Sam stand on his own as Captain America, and can Bucky grow on his own as a character without this buddy dynamic? It's really something that moving forward, like now that you bring it up, I'm very curious to see.
Absolutely. And then to challenge them is we've got an enemy that is something you can't just punch in the face, is you've got Tim Blake Nelson as the leader. So, and as we know, the leader is a super intelligent, he's human who gets mutated by events that we saw in the Incredible Hulk, and he has now come back as the bobble-headed the leader. Is he the leader? Or is he the leader? I think that he is the leader.
Yeah, I think they kind of go back and forth between pronunciation in the movie, kind of like how in Batman movies you'll hear some characters say Batman or the Batman, so I don't know which one is the correct one in this film, at least. um
Yeah, if I recall correctly, that's if you're talking directly to him, you call him leader, and if you're talking about him, he is the leader.
Right, yeah. And I'm an Incredible Hulk defender personally. I thought it was a pretty good movie, and it still baffles me that even after all these returning characters played even by the same actors, people will still be like, "Oh yeah, the Incredible Hulk movie, that's not canon." And it's like, are you stupid or something? Like, not
Yeah,
to
I'm
be
not sure.
mean, but like, I don't know
Probably
what the
that it
deal
didn't
is.
link up with anything, just because they didn't. That I mean, that argument is like saying that Moon Knight isn't canon simply because it doesn't really interact with anything else in
Yeah.
the MCU world. We know that at the end there is was it a cutscene? Not cutscene. Was it a cut scene at the end? Because he talks to Tony Stark at some point. Tony Stark comes and gets him for Avengers Initiative, if I recall correctly. Or no, it's Ross. Tony talks to Ross and says we're putting a team together.
Yeah, and then after the Avengers, they had to retcon the context of that so that if it, like, the fact that they went out of their way to make a short so that that Incredible Hulk ending could make sense with the Avengers, just it tells you like all you need to know, that they really wanted to fit with everything else, and therefore it's in continuity.
Yeah, and that's all that we really need for it to be consistent.
Yeah, and another returning character, you mentioned Thaddeus Ross. He used to be played by the late William Hurt, but now Harrison Ford has taken the role. What do you think of his take on the role in this movie?
I really love what he's doing. I love what Marvel's doing with that, but I also love Harrison Ford as it because we know that as Harrison Ford has gotten older, he's been able to be this gruff dude, but he also brings a real heart to the character. Whereas earlier versions of Ross have always been the kind of, I mean, like J. Jonah Jameson style, where he's just an antagonist. He is just that's his whole thing. But it's really great uh, to have how did I just forget his name? The actor,
Harrison Ford?
Harrison Ford. There we go.
Yeah.
I had William Hurt in my head. I'm like, no, Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford with a fantastic mustache, by the way.
Yeah.
My hat off to the props team, costume team,
Yeah, he
costume
definitely
makeup,
didn't
makeup and
grow
hair.
that.
Yeah, and magnificent. If that's what the Snyder cut Superman mustache should have been. Should have been just that magnificent piece of art that was on top of Harrison Ford's lip.
Yeah.
Honestly, we could put that thing in a display case. Uh, I really love having Harrison Ford. He brings a real heart to the character that we've seen throughout his career. Indiana Jones that we've seen that we've seen with Han Solo. Uh, Not that those are the only roles that he's done, but even the more serious human roles like Jack, um, not Jack Reacher. He's in the Tom Clancy. The
Oh yeah, I know which one you're talking about, but I've never seen it. So,
uh,
um,
but yeah, and like six different actors have all played that role, and yet Harrison Ford is one of the ones that we remember because he brings this idea of he's this rough, rugged dude, and so if he is this 5-star General Thaddeus Ross, yeah, we get to see someone who is he is a 5-star general, but also he is someone who has this understanding of who is the Hulk of who is his daughter Betty. He's got a reason to be here, and so then he now has to deal with this other superhero. In some ways, he almost is we could almost see him as a stand-in um, for Nick Fury, because in all the previous movies, Nick Fury is the guy with the plan. He's the guy with the eye on everything. Well, now we have Ross who is coming in, and he's got pieces and places, and he's looking at Sam Wilson. He's looking at Bucky, and he's like, "What are you guys gonna do for me?" Because now I got a world, stuff is going crazy. We've got Tim Blake Nelson and his giant bobblehead. How are you
yeah.
guys going to help me? And so, but seeing their relationship, just I mean, as in some ways, just as frenemies throughout the movie, uh, was really great. And so, I really love Harrison Ford's take on it.
Yeah, and with Harrison Ford, it's easy to imagine, the gruffness. So going into this, I was expecting him to just be, you know, typical grumpy old man type character. But like you said, he does bring heart to the role, especially when he talks to his daughter, Betty Ross, played once again by Liv Tyler after all these years.
Which is
And
great, having as much continuity there as possible.
yeah, and the relationship like feels very believable. Like it feels like it's the same characters as before, and you can tell that like he cares about her, and there's a part of him that still feels guilty about the stuff in the past, with him going against her boyfriend at the time during the Incredible Hulk, and even like the aftermath of that like years later. So he kind of in a way feels like a man out of time. Well, do I need to adapt to some of the changes going on here, or do I need to stick to my guns like I used to? So it's like he has like his own dilemma that I feel like people of older generations can kind of relate to in a way.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think about, like we were discussing, Sam Wilson and Bucky kind of being the traveling buddies duo, but now we also have a new Falcon. Now we've got Joaquin Torres. What do you think about that? What do you think about the way that they pushed him in? Because do they work well as a trio? Do they work well as more of a double, do you think?
It's hard for me because I'm so used to seeing Anthony Mackie as the Falcon.
Yeah.
So um,
Do they have to? do they have to learn to respond to different names? So,
Yeah.
Steve Rogers has been Captain America for so long. People call him Cap. Like, whatever, great, awesome. So if he's Falcon, uh, Sam, but they just call him Sam, whereas all the others are like, you know, well, now that I'm thinking of it, does anybody call Hawkeye Hawkeye? They do. They
I
do like
feel
the
like
fan
that's
characters who are like, oh yeah, you're Hawkeye.
yeah, yeah.
Just Natasha or Nat. Nobody is like, you're the Black Widow.
Right. Yeah, I feel like she's probably got that code name, but it's not said like to her face really, but
Yeah, so
yeah.
it makes sense that. But now, if Anthony Mackie he's still Sam Wilson, so he's still Sam, but and on top of being Sam, he also now has the shield, so he's now Captain America. Number one, is he a captain? Number two, is he Captain America or is he still the Falcon? Because he's still got wings, and if he's still the Falcon, then what are we supposed to call? What are we supposed to call this new guy? Just call him Joaquin? Is he the new Falcon? Do you call him Falcon?
Yeah, and there's even a moment where Harrison Ford as Thaddeus Ross is like, "Okay, so you used to be Falcon. I'm calling this new one Millennial Falcon." And
Yeah,
just a
which was a
reminder
great
that
the
yeah.
great laugh in the theater.
Yeah. Like with Marvel movies, there's always at least one like huge chuckle moment in the theater.
Yeah,
Uh,
they do a lot of fan service, but it's good fan service, or at the very least they're building their own fan service.
Right. And I was also surprised, like we didn't see this coming at all, but at least in our version of the movie, in our universe, there was the reveal that Doc Samson is also in the movie, played by Ty Burrell in the Incredible Hulk movie.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he also gets gamma radiation at some point, and it's his powers are dependent on how long his hair is, which is kind of funny. But I've heard that people found that whole joke throughout this movie to be grating. But what was your feel on that?
honestly, if you're gonna include a smaller character, great, that's awesome. I do feel like it would, you'd think it would take longer for his hair to grow out. That was a little surprising that it just grows like that. It's almost its own superhero. Oh, not its own superpower there, really. How fast his hair grows. I wish that I had those luxurious locks.
Yeah. I used to have long hair in high school, and then I kind of got tired of it. Um, I don't know if I can grow it long again. I've just never felt the need to try. I'm just comfortable just keep it short.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you this, because there were a couple of interesting plot things that I thought potentially help the movie. So we've got this idea of we got superheroes who are real good at punching things in the face. We know who the Falcon is. The Falcon is a get in there and cause a ruckus hero, whether that's new Falcon or old Falcon, Millennial Falcon. But they're up against the leader. They're up against a guy who, I mean, you could kind of think of him as like the newer Batman Riddler. Is that he's a villain who is not going to try to get in front of you because all you got to do is punch him in the face in his giant bobbleheaded face. But he is still causing a ruckus, so he's going to send you going around the world. So he sends these guys. They're going after the Spear of Longinus, and they're not time hopping. What am I saying? And they're location globe trotting. That's the word that I'm looking for. So they're going after the Spear of Longinus because the leader wants to protect himself physically. So he has sent them on this wild goose chase. They got to do this thing. So what do you think of that as like he's a hero who's got to do a thing, but also he's not trying to help the bad guy, but you've still got this dumb fetch quest. Uh, we'll call it a dumb fetch quest for all of that. It's like in a cop movie when they get the phone call and he's like, "You've got 12 minutes to get downtown." Click, and it's like, okay, well now our buddy cop duos have 12 minutes to get downtown and try to find the bomb.
Right. Yeah, I thought the globe trotting globe what did I say globe trouting like trouts are involved. I thought the globe trotting aspect it felt kind of like they felt like they needed to make it a global thing because it's like, oh, we gotta make it bigger, up the scale, when really that's like one of the criticisms that people level against Marvel movies, which is when it feels like it escalates into a whole save the entire world thing, people just sort of check out. And it kind of feels like they made it a global thing because of the title, Brave New World. Like, world is in the title, so we got to go around the world and whatnot.
And we saw that too in the shows, and that, oh, we're in Sokovia, and, oh, well, now we're in America, oh, well, now we're in. And I mean, you could say the same thing about any of the Transformers movies. You could say the same thing
Oh, yeah.
about, I mean, James Bond is the classic. I mean, even more recent things like John Wick, where he's going from New York City to now he's in Morocco, and now he's in Rome. And yeah, it seems that the globetrotting is like a big portion of it, just to arbitrarily have our heroes like, well, looks like we're headed to insert new location, and then we cut to that location. We've
Yeah.
got an establishing shot. We've
And they
got a
do
little bit of
the
ethnic
the
music.
giant letters again, like in Civil War, which I thought we were done with, but I was so annoyed with. But they came back, and I was like frustrated here.
Yeah, because you need that superscript along the bottom. Back at the hotel.
Yeah, and with Leader, I kind of like how they explained that during the snap, years prior to this, he escaped the prison that they put him in because all the security there, the guards and whatnot were they disappeared because of the snap, so he was easily able to escape, and he's been biding his time, coming up with the perfect plans and finally set in motion during this movie, which I thought was kind of fascinating.
Yeah, the guy just springs out like a jack in the box,
Yeah.
which does make you wonder. I just as a general point, and I wonder this about the Marvel universe, is we get some little talks about the blip, and people talking about, like in Spider-Man, it turns out that a couple of them have to go back to school, but despite being 5 years older than everybody else,
Yeah.
um, or younger or whatever, and it kind of does make you wonder that there's a lot more that should have happened. There are a lot of people that are going to die because suddenly you're on an airplane, and suddenly your captain disappears. When that captain reappears, where does he reappear? 35,000 feet in the air. There's plenty of prisoners in that prison who weren't able to telepath their way out of the prison.
Or
And
teleport.
just the guy who knows that they're there and is supposed to be giving them lunch disappears. Do they starve? Flip had a lot of negative fallout that we haven't really ever gotten to discuss.
Yeah, with the snap and the blip, like there's a lot of fuel for fan fiction, and I'm sure lots of fans are really tapping into all that, but the official on-screen stuff itself is only scratching the surface with all of that. And it's like, wait, no, this is like you could make an entire TV series set during this time period, like just normal people dealing with this sort of thing.
I know. Was it? I think it is an end game that we see a little bit of a
Oh, the
um
support group.
the support group. Yeah,
Yeah. But that's kind of like Saw 7, where there's a Jigsaw survivor support group, but they don't really do as much with it as they could have, in a way.
interesting. I
Yeah.
feel like that would not be a very big group.
Well, apparently there were like some games that happened off screen. So I think in the movie there were at least a dozen people at that support group, which is kind of
Yeah,
strange.
I feel like that would be more of a less of a trauma thing and more of a celebration thing. Like, you know that they go to that thing and they got steak and lobster, and they're just like, hey, what up? We made it through. Yeah, high five, everybody.
Yeah. This movie also introduces Sabra, and this was a character that, when announced, there were people, like this character in the comics at least has drawn criticisms from people of Israeli and Palestinian backgrounds, and, with things being what they are. Things were kind of awkward with the movie, but what'd you think of how they handled the character and tried to make her something that wasn't the stereotype that everyone was worried about?
Honestly, I think that's kind of an impossible challenge, especially with everything that's going on right now. If they had delayed this movie to next July, maybe they could have figured something out, but they released it when they released it, and we get to view the fallout, right?
Yeah.
I think that I mean, almost the best word that I can think of is to say interesting choice. But at some point, a superhero is a superhero, and sometimes they're kind of interchangeable. I actually am not familiar with Sabra as the comic character. Can you tell me, is there anything that they should have put in? As far as I saw it, she was just kind of a Superman Wonder Woman esque stand in.
Right. So, from what I understand in the comics, she's kind of like a spy, and apparently there's like an Israeli spy stereotype that wouldn't have flown with some people. So, to make her more like Superman or Wonder Woman, I think was a step in the right direction. But at the same time, it kind of feels like, at the last minute that they may have, it kind of feels like they cut out some of her stuff because they were maybe sort of timid and afraid of doing something wrong. But the end result is that we barely learn anything about her in the movie. It just sort of gets chalked up to, they ask, "Oh, what's your background?" And she says that's classified. And it's like she's this superhero, I guess, diplomat type character that we don't really know that much about yet, at least as far as this movie goes.
Okay. Yeah, and then here per the Wikipedia, it's saying superhuman strength, speed, agility, reflexes, endurance, stamina. I'm like, yeah, so you got the standard list. Okay. But that in some ways we could say that just kind of helps blend in with the ongoing issue with super soldiers that we've seen from the past couple of movies. This is, to introduce a totally new hero with a totally new set of skills, with a new set of abilities, then you're kind of running into issues we have with Black Adam. Is now we've got, okay, who is this person and what can they do and why, and what are the limitations? Instead of having to worry about that, we just get to see, okay, you're strong, fast, durable, boom. Okay, I understand exactly who you are. What's your background? Classified? Great. That's all we really need.
Yeah, like I feel like there are definitely people more qualified than myself who would say, okay, this is how you do it right. Or maybe they'll be like, oh, it's an impossible task. So I really don't know. Like, this movie is so fresh for us right now, but I feel like
Yeah.
in the coming days, we'll see like some online discourse in our universe about whether it was done well or whether it wasn't. And I think that'll probably influence how they handle the character moving forward.
And as we know, the internet is a place full of people who are reasonable and well balanced and won't have any issues discussing things peaceably. Yeah,
Right.
I think that's gonna work out great. Um, but thankfully, that is a very small portion of the movie and doesn't have a huge extent on the rest of the interaction, though. Although I am curious to know what you think about. I mean, obviously we've had a couple of movies that are leading up to the Thunderbolts, and now we've got just. I mean, this is the last domino before we get that, because that's coming. Think about this being a just a direct setup to that. We need a new Avengers team. Here we go.
Yeah, it's they tease this because throughout the movie you see like a red serum, and it's like, okay, we all know where this is going, but they pulled a fast one on us. It wasn't Thaddeus Ross who got it, it was Betty Ross. So now she's gonna be like Red Hulk, and
Oh,
it's like,
she's
wait,
got okay,
what?
yeah.
Like, I was not expecting that, but at the same time I feel like I should have expected that, you know.
Yeah, but I like that they're giving us new lady heroes.
I mean, Harrison Ford, like, there's a rumor that like he wasn't really into the idea of playing like a like the stereotypical superhero type. So it kind of feels like he passed on it, and then they're like, "Oh, well, we could just have her do it. And they very well could have had someone else do the motion capture for Thaddeus instead of Harrison Ford. But I feel like this, having Betty as like a Red Hulk opens up some possibilities and makes things a bit less predictable.
Yeah, and that also, I mean, from the outside, if we're looking at this as a from a producing standpoint, that also opens up possibilities. Because if we're being honest, Harrison Ford is, what is this, 81 years old? He's 81. If we're looking to have him be in the next couple of movies, he's not in shape to be doing heavy action stuff anymore. Uh, Granted, from what I understand, in the making of the newest Indiana Jones, he did great. You know, heck,
Mhm.
I hope that I get to 81 at all, much less, even being as fit as he is. That being said, he's still 81. There's no reason to, if he were to kick the bucket in the next couple of years, we can't really be surprised.
Yeah.
You're Marvel, you want to get as much security in your actors as possible.
Yeah, and I mean William Hurt, bless him, they basically went through that with him. He passed away, and
Yeah.
they had to figure out like what to do next. And I'm sure that like whenever any actor gets like to their 80s, it's kind of surprising at all to have long-term feature plans
I mean,
for
case in
that.
point, William Hurt was 71.
Yeah. So I think this really opens up possibilities for like where they could go, and hey, maybe Betty and Bruce could make it work. I don't know.
Yeah, what is red and green together? It's kind of a brown, isn't it?
Yeah, that's strange. Yeah,
See,
not Doctor
according to
Strange,
the
but
according to the internet, red and green together make, yep, it's a kind of brown color.
right. Um, but yeah, what do you think of some of the other stuff that this movie sets up for Thunderbolts?
I really like the idea of just having an anti-hero team. I think that that's really interesting because we're looking at obviously Brave New World. We're looking at a place where things are now complicated, and I think that's something that Marvel has shied away from a lot in the past. Uh, even as recently as Falcon and Winter Soldier, is you have this idea that these people were wronged and they're trying to get some action on it. That action consistently doesn't happen up until the point where they start engaging in violence, which by definition, that is what a terrorist is. It is somebody who
Yeah.
uses violence to engage in political to engage in political discussion. But we see it from the side of these two characters who get in there and they understand what's going on. And so when other people are like, these guys are terrorists, and this repeated line of like, hey, don't call him a terrorist. Why not? What are you going to call him? You're going to call him a freedom fighter? Like, what is this? So now we have this direct lead up that we've got this world that is more complicated. You've got a Captain America who isn't, super set on what's happening all the time. You've got a guy who he's not even super. He's just got a suit and a kick-ass shield. But so now we've got a team of people who are, hey, you're going to go do things that need doing, but that's made up of uh, I mean, look at this Ghost, who was killing people that wronged her. You've got U.S. Agent who wants to do the right thing but is real fascist about it. You've got the new Black Widow who was an assassin until she wasn't anymore. You've got Red Guardian, and you've got Taskmaster. So you've got people with a real checkered past, and now kind of a Suicide Squad situation where there's something that needs doing, and you got to go do it. Let's go kill our giant starfish.
Yeah.
We go home, we go kill our giant starfish. City's in wreckage, and shawarma's already taken. So I guess at the end we'll have a scene where we're all getting chili dogs.
Yeah, like there's definitely like some gray areas to explore. And I mean, in Marvel, there's like so much going on with like the government related stuff. Like you got like the Sharon Carter stuff, and you got,
Hmm.
even the stuff that carried over from the show, Falcon and Winter Soldier, with Isaiah Bradley, his appearance here really strengthened that connection. And again, like the bioweapon from that show. But
Yeah.
you and I, we've seen the show, so we have this perspective of like, okay, the connections like in this movie that connects to the show. But do you think anyone who hasn't seen the show would be lost going into this if they skipped it?
For the most part, no. I'm gonna say that it's okay because they definitely do a good job of introducing the ideas of Sam as Captain America right at the beginning. Is he's gonna be a different Captain America. He is not a man who is out of time. Not out of time meaning running short on time, but out of time meaning he's not a man who has to understand this world.
Right.
He's a man who has to deal with things as they are, and that things are unfortunately not complicated, or no other way around, that unfortunately things are complicated and not straightforward. That honestly, that has actually always been one of my major criticisms of um, Superman and Superman movies, is that Superman was invented in the 30s, as he was supposed to be a hero fantasy. That was the whole entire point of Superman. And even
Yeah.
up, into the 70s, not to say that the world was complicated, but that you could still tell the story of a man who is able to fly down and save the day. And what does that mean? Great, save the day, awesome. But post 9/11, we look at the terrain of Hollywood. You look at the stories that we tell, and we don't tell stories like that anymore. We don't look at the stories that we tell. We don't trust people that are here to save the day. You look at things like Watchmen. Look at things like The Boys. Look at things like even Batman is this idea that if somebody flies down all shiny and chrome, to save the day, what's his secret? What does he know? What's your deal? You like there's always some other thing. And he saves somebody. Even look at something that's made for families, like The Incredibles. Great. He's here. He's going to save the day. Awesome. He gets rid of a bomb, and he saves a train full of people. And what do? Well, the guy who was trying to kill himself sues him, and the train full of people that got hurt sue him. Like that's insane, and that is the world that Sam Wilson has to deal with now. Is he's got to deal with this world where the leader sets something up, the bad guy sets something up that's going to help a lot of people. Supposed to stop that?
Yeah, it's definitely like, a very complicated situation. Sorry, just to go on a tangent, like with Superman, I see how they went that route with like Man of Steel and everything after that. But I still think that the Superman fantasy, you could still have people distrust him, but as long as he remains like the optimistic do-gooder, I think those stories can still be told in a modern way still and have him maintain the essence of his character, like the new show Adventures of Superman succeeds at. But yeah, with Sam Wilson,
Okay, I'll
it's
check
like
that out.
he's doing with people really are questioning whether he's doing a great job as Captain America. Some people were really used to Steve Rogers, and there are reasonable criticisms and unreasonable criticisms, and it's the unreasonable ones are very unfortunate, and it's just he's in a position where he can't win, at least not right away.
Yeah, and then you look at the cynicism of life. If you can't
Yeah.
win, you have by definition you have lost. So you come out as a superhero, great, awesome. You got your rad suit, you got your mask, you got your shield. Okay, you come in, you kick the door in, and you still lose. Well, now my door is in shambles, and the bad guy still got away. So who's going to pay for this front door?
Yeah, and I mean they had to address the damages with like the Sokovia Accords several years ago, and even that was it kind of felt like they didn't define that very well, but it was an attempt at trying to go deeper with that sort of thing back then.
Yeah, which I do value and appreciate. I guess that's my personal rant, is that I think that Superman is inherently uninteresting because he is a straight up hero fantasy that doesn't really work in a more complicated scenario. If you're trying to gauge something like, I mean, I got to get your thoughts because we haven't talked about this after the movie yet. What do you think about the leader's big plan? Is he wrong? And if he's wrong, if he's not wrong, then is he the bad guy? And if he's not the bad guy, then is Sam? Does that by definition make Sam Wilson the bad guy?
Leader wants to basically inflict like a gamma radiation virus on everyone to see who can adapt, and it's basically like a survival of the fittest type thing. And he's also curious, like, how would this affect some of the people with mutations around the world? Because they're dipping their toes into like
Yeah, we'll be
slowly,
getting
like,
X-Men pretty soon.
yeah, exploring more of the mutants of the Marvel universe. And a lot of that is driven by his own curiosity. He's an intellectual first and foremost, and just wants to see what happens and how will the world change. And also to like address like the types of stories that can be told with these characters. Like, something I was thinking of recently within the last couple of days is that it would be so much easier to tell certain stories if we just didn't have them set on Earth with like all the baggage and whatnot, and just always had it on like a fictional world. Like, you could still have like
Sure.
some of the complexities, but having things in like real places, and uh like during modern times, and having to like reflect some of that, it's like there's a lot of baggage there. So like setting things on like a different world entirely makes some of that a bit easier, which
Sure.
it's like,
Sure.
why do we keep relying on Earth so much? Like, I know write what you know is a thing, but like Earth
Yeah,
is
or
kind
even
of
just
boring.
yeah, absolutely. Even just the idea of like, you know, put this in a near future. I mean, look at a movie like Equilibrium, um, or even something like Aeon Flux, V for Vendetta. I mean, I know I very much just dated myself with the things off the top of my head, but yeah, it's like by having them in something that is supposed to be Earth or close Earth, it definitely means that you're not able to ask some of the it makes it a lot harder to ask some of the questions that would be easier if you could be like, all right, alien society, but they've got this problem that's similar to ours, so we can focus on that.
And also, like, people were comparing Leader's plan to The Incredibles, which is funny that you mentioned that movie just now. The whole thing of if everyone is super, nobody is. And what'd you think of how everything unfolded as it all built to this ending of this movie and set the stage for, I guess, little teases of what's to come?
I mean, I'm stoked. We're gonna have a great time because now we've got any number of people who have this gamma situation going on. So honestly, I'm gonna go out. I don't think that this is a super stretch to say that, hey, is this the X-Men twist that we're looking for? Is this the thing that unlocks the X gene and uh what's the word that they call them? Not Homo habilis, Homo
Oh,
mutanus,
Homo Superior?
Homo superior. There, that's the one. Are we finally getting our Homo superior? Let's, hey, I would not be upset. I'm very okay with that. But also, that just opens us up to a whole new world of questions of
Yeah, a brave new world, one might say.
ah, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. I don't know. I'm stoked. I think that Marvel's got a lot of cards in their hand, and they've got a lot of interesting things they could play, and they are absolutely guaranteed to be continuing to force a new product down our throat every 4 months. So eventually we'll get one that's worth watching.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, these things keep flying at you, and it's like you want to enjoy all of them, but it's just not always going to happen.
Yeah. If you want my this may be blasphemous for some people, but if while we're on the
DC
subject of things and
Comics
too
is
much,
better than Marvel.
you watch your mouth, sir. I was gonna say it is because of that I'm Star Wars out.
Oh,
As
okay.
part of being a classic nerd, if you've been a nerd at any time past what 1970, when did the first one come out? Uh,
77.
if you've been a nerd past 1977, you to some degree have been required to be a Star Wars nerd, or at least a Star Wars fan. But there was a point after Disney buys Lucasfilm that, just like they did with Marvel, they start pumping out boom, 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 boom. Here's the new Star Wars thing. People are like, oh well, you know what you should do? You should watch Clone Wars. No, not the old Clone Wars, the new Clone Wars. Oh, you also got to watch this. Oh, hey, did you catch season 2 of Mandalorian? Oh, also it ties in with things from Ahsoka Tano and from Clone Wars and from. At some point, it's like, come on, I did, great. I'm glad people are enjoying it. But when you are, if there is always something that you could watch at any point, and there's no shortage of it. There's nothing special about watching that thing now, because there are five different things that are going on at any one time with five different degrees of importance and relevance, and they may or may not be good. And why?
Yeah, so if there are some points I agree with there. Personally, I think the Clone Wars, like the 2008 show, is peak content. Everyone should watch it, and Rebels is a great show as well. But I think the New Republic era Star Wars shows, like they, it's ridiculous that you're required to watch them in a certain order, and I think that once that era is done, they should just make more Star Wars shows that are each set in different eras, don't connect at all to each other, and are just, their own thing in their own eras. And because with the expanded universe of Star Wars, I loved how you could jump around to different eras, like thousands of years back, 100 years back, 100 years
Yeah,
forward.
absolutely.
So I want that to be exploited to the fullest on the screen and not try to do this mini version of the MCU. I totally get the feeling of being Star Wars out. For me, it's kind of different. Like, I still keep up with the shows and even like the comics and the books and all that stuff. But I'm tired of seeing people post about Star Wars. So for me,
Yeah.
it's like kind of different. Like, I want to keep continuing to experience the things and have discussions with people about each Star Wars thing that comes out, but I'm tired of seeing people post about Star Wars on all my feeds.
Yeah. I feel like from the perspective of an artist, and I mean, you would probably say the same as an improviser, as a creator, as a storyteller. Um, is I feel like if you set up a world where there could be 1,000 different stories, why are you requiring every single one of these stories to be connected to this 30-year gap of history, 50-year gap of history? Every single one of these stories is it's gonna have a Skywalker in it. It's gonna have a Jedi. And that Jedi it turns out that Jedi is the long lost brother of so and so, who is actually the cousin of so and so. Who,
Yeah.
oh, there was a time that he fought that guy back on the planet of Hooty Wooty, uh,
Yeah.
all those things. And that's where you get lines like, somehow Palpatine returned.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't have told any other story. So many stories you could have told, and you had to pick this one.
Right.
You've got, and I mean, yeah, extended universe is what's it called now? Star Wars Legends. Like,
Yeah.
we had 30 actual human years of people writing other stories in the Star Wars universe, and they're like, well, we're going to toss all that out. We're going right back to just recreate the last 30 years.
Yeah, and to be fair, they've been expanding a bit more these last couple of years with High Republic content, which has been pretty good. But again, I want the on-screen stuff to branch out too, which I feel like they're doing slowly. Like the Acolyte show being High Republic era, but at the very end of High Republic, so it's only like 100 years before Phantom Menace. And it's like, I feel like by this point we should have already had like five shows that each event, like one takes place 20,000 years ago, one is 1,000 years ago, one is 100 years ago, one is maybe 100 years forward. Like, we should have gotten that already, but it feels like they're playing it safe, utilizing the types of characters that we're familiar
Yeah.
with.
And compare that to another open world like any of the Dungeons and Dragons worlds, or even something like Warcraft or 40K. You've got open worlds where people can, if people want to write a Forgotten Realms book, great, they can do that. These stories might have connecting characters and they might not, and it totally works. Look at something like the works of Terry Pratchett. He writes this book series, Discworld, and sure, there are plot lines in there that connect. You might have, 4 or 5 books in a row that are directly chronological, but then he's going to write another book that's going to be on the opposite side of the planet and doesn't interact in any way. It's on a totally different continent, doesn't have any of the same characters. They might mention that there's another city named that thing. But you know what? We don't have to go there. We don't have to know anything about that. You can tell new stories. And I would love to see Hollywood tell new stories rather than just milking the same cow.
Like that's what I'm trying to do with my own self-published books. Like they're all in the same world, but like, and a couple characters do carry over from time to time, but trying to make it so that they can be read in any order, and sometimes different planets and
Interesting.
stuff. So yeah.
I didn't know you were working on that. Are you able to tell me more if you signed a non-disclosure with yourself?
With myself. First one is a fantasy horror comedy novel about college students dealing with werewolves, a vampire, and a serial killer, and scariest of all, loans.
Oh
And
no.
and the second one, which came out recently, first one is called Lemons Bloom Like Rain. The second one's called Trespassing Through the Visages. So it's fantasy, horror, and comedy again, but it has more sci-fi. And again, it has like some serial killers, but also like some alien characters, and it kind of explores some of the more cosmic stuff. And the next one that I want to put out will take place on a different planet altogether. Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. It's under the Standalones and Stepping Stones umbrella like series title.
Excellent. Now that you mentioned the title, I do recall you mentioning Lemons Bloom Like Rain. So I'm glad to hear that you've, been able to make more progress in that.
Yeah. But what'd you think of the credit scenes for Brave New World? Like which of these was your favorite, I guess? You
I'm a
liked it at
sucker
all?
for a cute dog doing anything. So I don't want to spoil it for everybody. But if you like cute dogs, stay through the credits because there's a really great, just funny little scene with a little dog. And I didn't have a good eye for it. But I think he's the same dog that we saw a couple of points throughout the movie.
Yeah, I've seen posts about that.
Yeah, who doesn't? I mean, hey, is it a cheap marketing gimmick? Yes. Does it work? Absolutely. People love a cute dog.
Yeah, I mean, hey, years ago, I infamously said that Inception would have been better if they had a dog on the team, you know?
Interesting. Yeah, he would be the mainstay throughout all the memories because of course everyone would remember exactly who this dog is.
Right.
Isn't there on the DC side, isn't one of the Red Lanterns a cat?
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I feel like there's a lantern for everything.
Yeah, not even like a it's not even like a alien-ish humanoid cat. It's just like straight up just a cat.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. But the other credit scene was basically just Bucky and Sam in the drive-through of a Jack in the Box, which, funny enough, I have like a Coke from Jack in the Box in my hand, but um yeah, it was just like them like trying to get their order right, and the person on the drive-through window is just getting it wrong, and it's like this supposed to be this funny back and forth thing, and it was fine. Like uh, I kind of feel like by this point that they're probably thinking, people are probably tired of credit scenes that set up really important things, so we'll just make them jokes from now on.
Yeah,
We're,
just having the bit like the callback to the shawarma bit from the first Avengers.
yeah.
You know what? Yeah, we're gonna go through this drive-through and we're gonna sit here and we're gonna eat our chili dogs.
Yeah, which I mean, it was kind of refreshing that unlike some of the other recent stuff, they didn't end by having them show up on Battle World for Secret War, and they didn't have any multiverse stuff in this movie, so it was refreshing in some ways.
Yeah, to just have a straight line. Yeah, I think multiverse for all of that it's fun and opens up options. At other times it can be a little too much for too many stories.
Yeah. So, what are your final thoughts and score out of 10? And do you know of measurement for that score?
Okay, here's what I'm going to say. This may be too much. This may be too little. I'm going to say 8 out of 10. Uh, I enjoy the buddy cop duo bit. I really enjoy the idea of having a villain who who's complicated, who may or may not be the bad guy, and I like having a hero who recognizes that. I think that's really great. And we are going to compare that to everything that's been going on recently, but we're also going to compare that to the DC universe and things that are going on over there. And as everybody in the world is trying to make more interesting, complex characters, we've got interesting, complex characters. We've got a cute dog. How can you say no to that? I feel like maybe 8 out of 10 feels too strong. We're going to say 7. We're going to say a 7. I'm going to say it's a recommend.
Okay. And what's your unit of measurement for that score? So, like, it could be an object related to the movie or whatever.
I'm gonna say it's should we use thumbs? 7 stars. We're gonna say it's stars.
Yeah, from his shield. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there we go. 7 shield.
All right, nice. Yeah, I think this for me is a 7.5 out of 10 chili dogs cuz they mentioned chili dogs. Um I think that this, like I said, it's refreshing in some ways. I do appreciate the return of characters that we hadn't seen since the Incredible Hulk, and also seeing Harrison Ford in the Thaddeus Ross role. He did a pretty good job with what he was given. um there were some things about the plot that I feel were kind of hit and miss, in some places kind of convoluted, so it's like, wait, what's going on type thing.
Yeah, all the
um
globetrotting as we'd noted.
yeah, but I do think I enjoyed this. This might be controversial, but I enjoyed this more than Civil War.
Okay.
Not, but not as much as First Avenger or Winter Soldier or even Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
We'll definitely note that yeah, not Civil War. Winter Soldier is definitely still peak Captain America.
Mm,
I
yeah,
like and
it's
kind of
really
in line
good.
with that idea of having complicated bad guys who are doing you understand why they're doing what they're doing. And even though we don't agree with the whole fascist agenda, it's interesting to see him taking on a whole system rather than like you're the bad guy, you're not trying to rob the bank, you're trying to kill 10 people. It's you've
Yeah.
got 1,000 guys with you because they all think this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I mean, Leader is even like, oh, the Hulk, I don't really care about him anymore. I'm just doing my own thing, focusing on changing the system.
If anything, like he's going to be bros with Hulk because obviously we know from the events of She-Hulk that Hulk is
Right.
AFK for a hot minute. So even if he does come back, yeah, the leader's got no beef with the Hulk.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that'll do it. Thanks for joining me again, Austin. And you had something improv related you want to plug?
A couple of things coming up actually. I work with a group called the Improv Collective at a theater in Costa Mesa, um, and we got a bunch of different teams, but we are there every Friday and Saturday at 9:30. The teams that I particularly am performing soon. I have a show with my team Instant Improv we have coming up on the 17th, and another team if you like an improvised genre play. We're doing that on the 18th. And then if you want to participate, if you like improv and you want coaching and stage time and way to get in the crowd with other Orange County people, we have auditions coming up for IFL, which is an absolute blast. That's coming up November 18th and the 25th at 3 p.m. You can find all that information is online, improvcollective.fun. We pay extra for the .fun so that you don't have to.
Nice. Yeah, and I'll put that link in the show notes for the episode as well.
Right.
So, yeah, thanks for joining me again. And without,
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you for having me.
yeah, and without further delay, have a good day.
You do the very same.
Okay, so now for the plugs before the other me gives his reviews. I already plugged my books, so there you go. I'm also at Steven Shinder on Instagram, X, Threads. I was kind of MIA there for a while, but slowly picking back up a little bit. But maybe I'll disappear again. I don't know. Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook. You can also find my Letterboxd and Goodreads, which will be in the show notes. And you can email Delayed Replay via delayedreplaypodcast at gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on cute dogs, I guess. I'm also on a podcast slash vlog called Yesshift, which I do with my dad. We talk about Yes and its members, and people who've worked with them. We recently put out a review of the Keith Emerson Variations box set and a 40th anniversary retrospective on Yes's 90125 album. And there will be other interviews coming up in the near future if you're at all interested in any of that. And you can, I think that's pretty much everything. So, yeah, the other me will give his thoughts in a moment about comic booky stuff of this week. I mean, what a huge week. I mean, even just over here, like Captain America Brave New World for Veterans Day weekend, and there's also a bunch of other stuff over there. It's wild. So, without further delay, here's the other Steven. Alright, hey everyone, this is Steven from that universe where things got delayed. So for me, the Marvels just came out, and there's also some other stuff like Doom Patrol and Loki just finished, and I'm also watching Invincible, and I may talk about The Room after all those, or the screening I went to at least, but yeah, non-spoiler thoughts for pretty much all of these. Well, for the Marvels, I might go into a couple spoiler things, but I'll give a warning before I do. So, first off, DC's Doom Patrol, the best live action DC TV show, just ended on Thursday, and it was very emotional. I was pretty, it really tugged at the heartstrings where it left everyone and everything. I did see people saying that they wish that a couple other characters had been able to be in the finale, and I do agree with that. But I think they still did really well with what they had. This was a show that told stories about down to earth characters and not so down to earth scenarios. These are characters who are considered outsiders, and you get ridiculous sounding names like Robot Man, Negative Man, Elastic Girl, um, Elastic Woman in this TV show, I guess because of Pixar's The Incredibles being a thing. Even though DC's Elastigirl came first, but anyway, and Crazy Jane and all these other characters. Michelle Gomez, who played Missy on Doctor Who, played Madame Rouge on this show. And earlier in the series, Alan Tudyk played the villain, Mr. Nobody. And they've had Timothy Dalton as Niles Calder. Like this, you get a lot of great actors here. Brendan Fraser as Robot Man, Cliff Steele, uh, and Matt Bomer as Larry Trainer, Negative Man. But also, like, these characters with masks, of course, have their doubles who put on those outfits, and, these actors, like, add their voices. But for characters like Rita Farr and Crazy Jane, like, they play as themselves. But point being, this was a very talented cast and crew, and it got really weird they encountered some really strange villains, including Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man, and all sorts of really bonkers scenarios. And it was just a lot of fun, but it also touched on very important issues like mental health, LGBTQ issues, some, uh, disabilities and mortality and immortality. This is a very deep show, as ridiculous as the premise might seem on the surface. And I honestly can't imagine that there will be any other live action DC show in the near future that'll be this great and this deep. And I'm glad that it was given an ending. It has finality. I still really wish that all the people I had told about this show had watched it. I hope they still do. Like, even though it's over, like, maybe now that it is over and it's only 4 seasons, maybe that'll encourage people to be like, okay, it's a complete package and not too many seasons, so finally check it out. But it's such a great show, and I can't say enough great things about it. Unfortunately, there's still some Doom Patrol comics I've yet to get through. I'm still in the mid 2000s run. I still like. I've heard the Gerard Way run is really good. The Grant Morrison run was amazing, and I also like the pulpiness of the 60s stuff. But yeah, this was an incredible show, incredible team, incredible performers, and artists that worked on this series. And I miss it. Like, it ended the other day, and I miss this show. But I'm glad that it happened, and we got more seasons than we might have expected. Like, given the things stacked against it. This was not as mainstream of a show as, it didn't have as big of an audience, as many people talking about it, at least in my circles. So the fact that it got 4 seasons is something I'm very grateful for. And yeah, people can go ahead and watch the whole thing on Max whenever they can. Hopefully they don't do any stupid tax write-off thing or whatever and like remove it. But anyway, yeah, go see it like as soon as you can, if only for fear of that happening. So yeah, that's Doom Patrol. Very happy with it. Incredible. I can't say enough good things about it. And then also on Thursday, I went and saw The Marvels at the theater. And this was just a day after the actors strike ended and reached an agreement. So I went to see The Marvels, and I got like a free popcorn because it had been my birthday recently. I also got a Pepsi with that. Bought a Pepsi, and so this was a movie I was looking forward to. I know there are people online have this stupid fascination with putting down anything Captain Marvel related. When I watched that movie 4 years ago, I went back and looked at my review, and I said that it was good. Like, I guess I liked it more than I remembered, but thinking back to it all this time later, like in my head, I think, okay, yeah, that movie was fine. It did have issues in the beginning where it kind of jumped around and stuff. The explanation for Fury's eye is ridiculous. Like, those are pretty much all my critiques. I didn't really have a problem with anything else. And this movie, The Marvels, I was looking forward to it. It got delayed from like, I think summer to November, but it didn't feel like that big of a delay to me. And I think the beginning does have similar issues where it kind of jumps around and it gets a little confusing. There are moments throughout where it feels like they edited sequences that would have made things play a bit smoother. Like, I think maybe an extra 5 minutes for that sort of thing might have improved the pacing a bit. Maybe they did this because they thought it would help the pacing, but it was just something I noticed. And as far as prerequisites go, this follows threads from a few different, Marvel projects, shows, but I would say the major ones, the one you have to absolutely have watched, obviously Captain Marvel. You get introduced to a kid, Monica Rambeau, in there, and she does appear as an adult in WandaVision, and you see how she gets her abilities in that show. But I feel like this movie, like if you have not seen WandaVision, it does a nice job of explaining the bare bones of how she got her abilities, and you still already know the character from the Captain Marvel movie. And so I feel like if you've only seen her in that movie, this new one acts as a nice reintroduction to her as an adult, and you might watch it and be like, oh, I want to go back and watch WandaVision and see what happened there. Although, I'd be kind of surprised if people listening to this have not seen WandaVision already. It was a great show for the most part. It fumbled with the ending, in my opinion, but still great stuff and really cool post-credit and mid-credit scenes. One of those was cool. Anyway, the stuff connected to the Marvels was, that it teased for the Marvels was cool. But the show Ms. Marvel, I would say absolutely watch that before watching this. Because I'm not sure how invested one will feel in Kamala Khan just from watching this movie without having seen her journey in the show. And the show is really good. I really enjoyed the show Ms. Marvel. And just as a side note, I totally forgot to watch The Marvelous Ms. Maisel in the lead up to The Marvels just for the bit. Like I was thinking of doing that just to be funny, and I've been told I should watch that show, but maybe sometime soon. So yeah, definitely Ms. Marvel. Secret Invasion, I feel like, was a terrible show, and I don't, there are Skrulls in this, and Nick Fury is in this, but it honestly feels like Secret Invasion didn't even happen. Like, I didn't notice, the show was forgettable to me, but even so, like, I didn't notice any connection to Secret Invasion. In fact, I even saw somewhere that something in this movie contradicts something in Secret Invasion. So I don't know, it kind of feels like they're separate entities, but yeah, you totally don't need to watch Secret Invasion before this. So there might be other connections, but Ms. Marvel is definitely the must-watch prerequisite, I would say. But I'd be curious to, and Captain Marvel as well, but I'd be curious to hear what are people's experiences with this movie as their introduction to Ms. Marvel. Do they get a little bit lost, but then think, okay, I enjoyed this, I want to go back, or like, what's the experience there? I'm really curious. But yeah, this was a fun movie. It does have its flaws, but nothing at all like the stupid criticisms that you see online where people are like, oh, this is terrible. I even heard that someone said worst movie ever, which just makes me think that that person has not seen many movies. There is a sequence that's cute, but also kind of disgusting, but also hilarious. So I could see maybe the disgusting aspect, maybe putting some people off. But I thought the chemistry was great between these three lead actresses playing Monica, Carol, and Kamala. Kamala does have a couple, she gets really fangirl-ish around Carol Danvers, which is understandable given, if you've seen Ms. Marvel and what she enjoys like talking about and cosplaying and whatnot. But there were some funny lines, but also a couple of really cringe lines. There's one during a handshake moment I thought was really cringe and could have been cut, but I still think the characters do grow a bit over the course of the movie, but it maybe feels a little bit rushed, perhaps because of the runtime. This is an hour 45 minutes, which is kind of refreshing. Life is busy, and you don't want some movies to just eat up like 2.5 hours if they don't need to. So I kind of appreciated that. But yeah, I still think this was a fun movie, even though if it's not like top tier or peak. I had a fun time going out to the theater for this, and I went to the earliest showing on that Thursday, and there were only a few of us there. And granted, it's a Thursday afternoon, but I have seen that this might be the lowest opening weekend for an MCU movie. So I don't know what's going on there, but like hopefully it'll pick up. But yeah, overall I thought this was to me it's a 7.5 out of 10. What do I want my unit of measurement to be? Flirkins. So yeah, it didn't really reach the 8 out of 10 feel to me, but again, I still had enough fun and enjoyable enough time. So 7.5 I think feels right. In terms of post Endgame MCU movies, the 9 out of 10s for me are the Spider-Man sequels, and even outside the MCU, Across the Spider-Verse would be about a 9, and Shang-Chi, it's also a 9. This is maybe around where I'd rank Black Widow. I don't remember if I ever gave that a numerical score, but I think that one kind of felt like a 7 or so to me. So this might be like kind of around there, although very different tones, these two movies, which is cool. I definitely enjoyed this more than Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I gave that one a 6. More than Thor Love and Thunder, I gave that one a 5. It was pretty mediocre, painfully unfunny movie. More than Eternals, which I thought was really boring, and the characters like didn't really stand out. Like I forgot who half of them were. I think I gave that like a 4 or 5. It's my least favorite MCU film. What else has come out over here post Endgame? I think I enjoyed most of the Disney Plus Marvel shows than this. Ms. Marvel definitely better. Secret Invasion I gave a 4 out of 10. So this is definitely better than that. But as far as other Marvel shows, I think, I don't know. I think I'm enjoying the Disney Plus shows, most of them anyway, more than the average person. Moon Knight, I'm in the minority of giving that a 4 out of 10, I think. So that's down there, way down there as well. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the closest to a 10 out of 10, I'd say. So this is definitely not on that level. Although funny enough, there is a moment that feels kind of like a repeat of something that happens in Guardians. I think I gave Wakanda Forever a 7 to 7.5. I was reminded of Wakanda Forever because in this movie, I was wondering if the experience of being introduced to Ms. Marvel here would be similar to being introduced to Ironheart in Wakanda Forever. Because while watching Wakanda Forever, I was kind of wishing that we'd gotten the Ironheart series first and then had her in Wakanda Forever. And I'm sure people can compare that to Spider-Man in Civil War, but that's a different case, I would say. Like, Spider-Man is super popular. Everyone already knows his history. So, yeah, again, just a little similarity I noticed. And so before going into spoilers, just I really like what this movie sets up for the future. So it does make me look forward to some of the things to come. So yeah, right now I'm gonna go into spoilers. Look in the show notes for the timestamps for when I get past them. And yeah, so spoilers coming now. Okay, so also another thing that happened in the Marvels was a scene where they go to a planet where everyone speaks in song, so it feels like a classic Disney musical. And I kind of wish they'd gone further with this. Like, I could definitely tell that certain people, like, the dude bros of the internet are going to cringe at this scene, but I wish that they had gone further with this scene. It felt too brief and like it didn't tap into its full potential, but alas. One of the credit scenes involves a Kamala going to uh, the place from the Hawkeye TV show where Kate Bishop and the dog are at, and she does the Nick Fury thing almost word for word, and it's really funny. But after the fact, I wondered, how does she know like these words word for word? It feels like she watched Iron Man within the MCU, which doesn't really make sense. So until further explanation, my current headcanon is that Nick Fury wrote out different scripts for like how he should approach Tony Stark, and then he tucked them all into the drawer, and Kamala found the drawer and the script that he ended up using and just memorized that basically. And yeah, this is setting up Young Avengers finally. In this universe where there's a break between 2019 and 2021, that break didn't help because it feels like it's been very hurry up and wait when it comes to Young Avengers, even though they've been introducing characters like Ironheart, America Chavez. In this credit scene, they explicitly mention Ant-Man's daughter, and they may have mentioned someone else as well, but yeah, the Young Avengers are on the way finally, and it's really nice to see that they're finally acknowledging this and showing that they're committing to this and that it'll finally happen at some point. But I do still wonder whether Spider-Man would be part of this or whether he'll remain a solo act. So very curious to see where this goes. And the other credit scene, the one that made me yell out loud, "Oh my gosh," when I saw it in the theater, was so at the end of this movie, Monica Rambeau ends up in another universe, and this is a universe that includes X-Men. So you see Beast with a lab coat, but he still has like the blue skin and fur. I think he's CGI here, but it's Kelsey Grammer's voice. Really cool that they brought him back. I've been watching the Frasier revival, and I think overall it's average, but it's had some poignant moments in certain episodes, but also some very average and typical moments in episodes. So I'm enjoying it, but it could be a bit better. But anyway, this, again, the X-Men have also felt hurry up and wait. We got a little hint of them at the end of Ms. Marvel, but now it's like they're finally full steam ahead. So it really feels like the Marvels is showing us that, yes, these things are happening. Like, your waiting is paying off. We are committed to making these happen in the MCU. So I'm very curious to see where this goes. And Monica's mother, who's, dead in the main universe, but is alive in this other universe, apparently as a Captain Marvel. It's really interesting setup as well. So I really love what this movie sets up. It gets me really excited. But yeah, so fun movie and great setup for future stuff. The box office, we'll just have to see how that goes for this movie. But the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe is dying narrative is a load of crap. So, yeah, so that's the end of spoilers for that here. So, after seeing the movie, I went home and I remembered, oh, yeah, the Loki series finale is on. So, no spoilers for what happens, but it leaves things in an interesting place and really makes you curious, like, how are things going to play out now with the other stuff coming up in this multiverse saga? And Loki is a strange show in that I can see all the work being put into it. You know, it's visually looks great. It doesn't feel like they're relying on too much CGI. And you know, it just feels like a real show or a real drama. Like it's really doing interesting things with the characters, but it's a show where I can see all the effort, but I also feel like detached from all the stuff that's going on. And also, you know, the controversy with a certain actor. You know, I don't know what's happening with that, but yeah, the ending like was interesting at least, and again, set up for uh things to come, I guess, in the near future. Really gets one curious in the MCU. As far as other comic book shows, I've also been watching Invincible season 2. Only the first 2 episodes of that have come out so far, but I'm really enjoying it. They do introduce something that's been kind of popping up in some other things and feeling really repetitive, but that was just in the premiere episode. And the second episode of this season I liked a bit more, and just all the stuff that they're doing with the characters. And it's, you know, I'm glad to have this show back. It's great, and it makes me want to continue forward from where I left off in the comics some years ago. So yeah, those episodes have been coming out on Fridays, and also later that same day, you know, last night I went to see The Room. You know, not Room, starring Brie Larson, which is a pretty good movie. Uh, Definitely watch that. But yeah, I went to a screening of The Room, the Tommy Wiseau movie, with friends. First of all, I know this is going long, so I won't spoil The Room. But yeah, I went with friends to see a screening of it at Landmark Cinemas in Los Angeles. And there were a bunch of The Room fanatics there. It is really wild. And Tommy Wiseau was there as well. He was kind of standing behind this like plastic booth or box type thing and getting pictures with people. And I think he was also wearing gloves. So there uh, were concessions, but it was like like movie theater price. So I just got a cider, and so I sat down with my friends toward the front. I think we were in the second row or something like that. Maybe third. I don't know. But before the screening, you know, as we were all sitting there, Tommy came out to do a Q&A. So several people lined up to ask him questions like, what's your inspiration, or where are you from? How do you get into this and that? And his response was almost always like, who cares? Like he gives these non-answers. And the close, like, he did say that, oh, you inspire me. Like that was just a quick answer to one of them. But someone else asked if they could be in his movie, and he said to talk to this other person who I guess is associated with him. Uh, and yeah, so it was really strange that they do they allow this Q&A, but he just gives all these non-answers, and it's pretty much just for, it feels like it's just for the bit and just for the laughs and whatever. So this screening was one of the wildest screenings I've ever been to. um, Everyone brought plastic spoons. My friends brought a bunch as well, because during the movie there are moments where you see a spoon or a picture of a spoon. So whenever that happened, people would throw the plastic spoons toward the front and like toward the screen, but not at the screen. And it was kind of fun for a little bit, but then it got to a point where like, okay, a couple of these spoons are hitting me, and there are people who even threw plastic forks, and it's like that's really dangerous. So the everyone had this lively energy, but there were some funny lines in this movie that it was not done the best way. In this movie, again, no spoilers, but you could tell that there was a lot of ADR, like dubbing the dialogue after the fact, over when it was originally said, and it was so obvious. The it wasn't as the movie itself wasn't as awkward as I imagined. Like the only thing I'd seen from this was the flower shop scene, which I thought was funny. Um, the love scenes weren't as awkward as I thought they would end up being. Although the songs I would play during these love scenes were louder than they'd typically be in these types of scenes, I think. And there must have been like 3 or 4 of these within the span of a half hour early in the film. And this is a 90-minute film. But thankfully, like nothing too explicit. Uh, I mean, on IMDb, there's a parent's guide. You can like look at that if you're kind of cautious or whatever. But yeah, like there were awkward moments, sure, but apart from that, the acting is very, it's ridiculously done. But also, this felt to me like, in terms of the look of the apartment or whatever type of place it is, with the red walls, and some of the types of conversations and the strange, unexplained occurrences, it felt kind of like a David Lynch movie in a way, but without the supernatural elements. It felt like things just sort of happen, or like certain things, however, would be really repetitive, and things would happen like not in the way that you would logically expect. But I mean, the ending of the movie, I mean, it got really dramatic, and I was really blown away. So this movie was not as terrible as I was expecting it to be. I do think it kind of lived up to the hype, but again, with the crowd, like sometimes they would be reciting the lines as they were happening, so I was able to hear some funny lines, but other funny lines would be drowned out by the audience, and I got kind of annoyed by that, because I wanted to experience this thing firsthand, from the movie. And whenever, like, the audience had all these weird bits, like whenever you see these shots of the city, of San Francisco, which I thought were really nice shots. uh you'd see the cars on the Golden Gate Bridge, and they'd be like, go, 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 go. And when a random character shows up in the movie after a certain actor had left the production, everyone just kept saying, "Who are you?" whenever the character appears. Apparently, the character's name is Steven, which is interesting. The friends I went with were Keon, Jenny, and another friend of theirs named Steven. Not the Keon who's been on this show, but a different Keon. And I think Keon had seen Tommy a couple times before over the last several years. But yeah, this crowd was really wild. And there were a couple things mentioned by characters in the movie that you would think would be important throughout the movie, but just don't ever get mentioned again. Like a certain disease that someone has, like, is mentioned once, and then it's never a factor again whatsoever in the movie. Um, but yeah, it was an entertaining watch for the most part, I would say. I rate things based on how much I enjoy them, not in terms of like quote unquote objective quality. I don't really believe in that sort of thing, for the most part, anyway. So I would give The Room 7 out of 10 spoons, because of course it would be spoons. It really has to be seen to be believed. Like, just yeah, it's I don't really know that I can say more and like do justice to like what a strange film this is, but I didn't have a terrible time. There were just like little things here and there I was kind of annoyed about. Oh, and before the movie started, there was a trailer for his Tommy's newer movie, Big Shark, which looks ridiculous. Looks like there's like a flooded city and a giant CGI shark, and he and some other people going up against it or something. It was so the room uh started playing at 8 p.m., ended around 9:30. I think Big Shark was gonna be starting at 10:30, and I think we briefly considered seeing it, but we ended up going to a Thai restaurant instead. It's called Thai Emporium. It's across the street from the Nimoy Theater, which is named after Leonard Nimoy. And the food at this Thai restaurant was really good. We got like I think a sort of beef curry and honey crisp duck. Um, what else? We got the pad thai chicken. For dessert, we had these donuts that felt like little cinnamon roll things. So, like, those mini cinnamon roll things. And like, this is a really cool place. Like, it might have been kind of fun to see Big Shark. Maybe it has some hilarity to it, but I don't regret going to this Thai restaurant. It was a really great dinner, really great late night dinner, and the lighting was kind of, it was like kind of mysterious because like the light was like a little dimmed, which the walls were also red, which kind of reminded me of The Room as well, weirdly enough. But yeah, it's a cool place worth going. So that's pretty much the experience of seeing that screening of The Room with a few friends. And yeah, it was a really fun night seeing a movie and then hanging out, eating food afterward. I know it has very little or nothing at all to do with comic book media, but hey, it happened last night. This episode's coming out like right after, today. So might as well just throw it in there and tie a nice bow on it, a little extra thing on top. So yeah, I guess that's it for now. I'm not sure if there will be something I can talk about next episode, like at the end, but we'll see what happens. So without further delay, have a good day.